through, alcoholism, infidelity, addiction, that I haven't taken something positive away from.
Okay.
To help our brothers and sisters.
Serious, man. And I know that the standard of proof is preponderance, which
that the internal affairs investigation that gets conducted is fair and impartial.
Our next guest is all the way from the state of Florida. Meet John Kelly, a 30-year veteran of Broward County Sheriff's Office. John has struggled through his career with alcoholism, addiction, adultery, PTSD, and thoughts of suicide. In other words, his career was on a downward spiral, man. John has taken his life experience, both the good and the bad, to develop a wellness leadership program for those that are out there still fighting the good fight. His program is a 4-hour motivational seminar that addresses the whole of the person. Look, personal, professional, financial, physical, and mental health are the focus of the program. It's a proactive initiative that looks to start the conversation and remove the stigmas associated with asking for help. Difficult topics are examined at a level that becomes relatable and it becomes actionable. Relationships, PTSD, and suicide are addressed and resources are explored. John would say, if not me, then who? If not you, then who? In an environment that has abandoned the law enforcement professional at every single level. Now more than ever, we need to be there for each other. There exists a moral responsibility for us to take care of our brothers and sisters. And today, John will talk about an internal affairs investigation where he was accused of serious misconduct relating to possessing and distributing steroids. There exists a moral responsibility for us to take care of our brothers and sisters. Today, John will talk about an internal affairs investigation where he was accused of some serious misconduct. But what's more important is the conversation we will have about the process of his personnel complaint. This investigation, specifically how he was treated from the beginning until the adjudication of his IA. Get ready for a powerful story, man. One you don't want to miss. Welcome to Internal Affairs, a police podcast. Let's do this. Welcome back to Internal Affairs, a police podcast. Wow, man. Another good dude, my guy, a great guest, John Kelly. Thanks for coming, brother.
Marlon, nice to see you, my friend. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, so check this out. Before we get started, just a couple of quick announcements. As you see, 12 seconds in the dark. Look, John Mattingly was one of my guests, and he was just superb individual in general. But the story that happened with the Breonna Taylor raid, you got to read it. So the book is there. Get a copy, go to Amazon and make it happen. Our sponsors, Code 4 products. If you're looking for challenge coins, badges, or any type of insignia, get a hold of them. The website's going to be on the YouTube channel. Then you have the Titan Group, professional investigations. If you're looking for any type of investigations, whether they're internal affairs, for firefighters, any type of workplace complex investigations, go to the website and you'll see the link in the YouTube channel. And last but not least, as you may know, I'm a law enforcement instructor with Savage Training Group, and we offer my course, a 2-day course of internal affairs, day 1, officer-involved shootings, also known as OISs, on day 2. And there's much, much more. Again, go to the channel. In the bottom, you'll see the link on the podcast. So, without further ado, let's do it, JK.
Yeah, what do you say?
Well, look, man, you know what? You were kind enough to invite me as a guest, which I really appreciate. I was recently retired, and I wanted to just kind of tell everybody about, hey, man, let's talk about IA, because it's just
Right.
not a topic, not a subject that everybody likes to talk about, right? Would you agree?
No doubt.
Yeah, so the way we start the episodes here, got to ask you the first question right off the bat. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, please rate the importance of internal affairs and why.
So, internal, it has to be a 10. And they have to, unfortunately, not always, but they have to operate independently from command. And that's the thing that keeps the playing field level. And I think that's, if we delve into that later on in the episode, having an internal affairs operate independently from command or command's wishes or the political entities, that's an important part. And that's why it's such a weighty responsibility, because you need that sense of fair play.
When you say independent from command, I totally get it. I'm a true believer that, look, if you come from a small agency, why doesn't the chief of police call the other chief of police and say, hey, man, do me a solid. I got this internal misconduct alleging all kinds of stuff. Can you have one of your best sergeants actually investigate this? And believe it or not, that's not a practice at all. We just happen to do our own, and that's where the problems start, right?
It does. And, it's not a really difficult fix, right? I mean, 2 seconds in, man, you came up with a solution that could be workable. And it's that important, man, because without that, right, without that sense of fair play, that undermines the integrity of the entire department. And so, agencies need to get that right.
Very good point. And I emphasize internal because you and I both know, and we're going to get into this story, your story, if you will, that the internal discipline that occurs where you're being alleged, it's serious, man. And I know that the standard of proof is preponderance, which is like 51%, also known as more likely than not. But when it comes to internal allegations of serious misconduct, you know what? You better crank that up all the way to like 80 or 90. And we seem to forget that, and it just kind of sucks.
Yeah. There's a lot that goes with that, right? And I always like to say, man, that if you get hauled into internal affairs, you did something wrong, right? It's something just didn't materialize out of thin air. There's got to be, more often than not, there's some basis, right? Some basis for the investigation. And that's where it should be, a basis for an investigation. But a lot of times, conclusions like to be drawn before there's an investigation. And so that's problematic. And then you have, the intricacies of a policeman's bill of rights and different rights that get bestowed upon the individual officer that should be adhered to. But again, when it's a big agency and they're doing their own thing, who's checking them to make sure that they're abiding by, their own policies. And so, that becomes problematic on many different fronts.
Very well said. Hey, finish this sentence for me.
Sure.
As an internal affairs investigator, my job is to what?
Find the truth. Find the truth of this. Find the truth of the allegation.
And as you're trying to find the truth, something you just said kind of hit the light bulb. Should you have expectations before you actually start trying to find the truth? Meaning being a little biased, like, oh, it's John. I know for a fact that this happened. Or oh, there's no way. It's John. It just didn't happen.
Yeah. So I know that, there's going to be a bias one way or the other, especially when we're dealing with people that we've worked with. I mean, I've had internal affairs investigators that I worked with on the street.
Mm-hmm.
Like, back in the day, we were zone partners, and our careers take different paths. Now they're in a position now investigating an alleged misconduct or a policy violation of something of that.
Right.
And it would be naive to believe that they didn't bring any bias to the investigation, either for or against the person they were investigating.
Good point. Because I'm not saying it's good or bad.
Right.
I'll be the first one to tell you that if you and I, because I know you and we're partners and we went to the academy together, and like you said, we took different paths. I became a sergeant. I got assigned to IA. Yeah, someone comes with this outrageous typeless misconduct. I'm going to say, there's just no way. There is no way that John did that, or I should say, John did that.
Right.
And so I would be extremely shocked if the facts or the evidence led me to believe that this particular allegation has the possibility to come back sustained. Right. Absolutely, because sustained means it occurred.
But I mean, ultimately, if you do an investigation and you ask the right questions, which you should be doing, it's going to become very evident, very clear whether or not there's any substance to the allegation. And that's why having that internal affairs component is so critical.
Yes.
Listen, if you stepped out of bounds and you did something wrong, you're going to get smacked.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. But if that's not the case, man, then that's not the case. It's one of those things where we getting back to that sense of fair play. Like, listen, if you've done your investigation and at the end of the day, you don't like it that you didn't find what you needed to find.
Yeah. Totally. Totally.
That's it. Then it's you have to be okay with, giving me back my badge.
That's right. Fair play is fair play.
It's. I think when we need to do a better job of not making it personal.
Oh yeah, I say that a lot. In my beloved LAPD, there's so many levels of review. There really is.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised how many. And then what happens is, and I've been a witness to this, and it doesn't sit well. And by the way, it doesn't happen all the time, but
no.
At some point it becomes personal. It doesn't become about the process. And that's part of the problem, which is probably one of the reasons why we have such a bad stigma, right?
Right. Yeah. I think that, and I'll say this, when it comes to like a negative stigma for internal affairs investigators, and it's on an individual basis, on a per agency basis, they need a command, an internal affairs command that has the cojones to say no. Hey, we're gonna run my shop the way I run my shop. And what the problem is, Marlon, is that when you get into these big agencies, everybody above the rank of lieutenant is an at-will employee.
Yeah.
So you have captains and majors and colonels over these huge divisions that serve at the pleasure of the sheriff or the chief, and there's a conflict of interest there, because if they're not in line with the thinking of command, I've watched situations unfold where you just grab your head and go, "You got to be kidding me!" And it's because the legitimacy that should be there isn't,
mm-hmm.
and I'm speaking in generalities now, but it's important for the rank and file and the people in the agency to know and believe that the internal affairs investigation that gets conducted is fair and impartial.
Spot on. Sense of fair play. You couldn't have said any better. It's, I'm a soccer guy. I'm a soccer dude. It's kind of like playing 90 minutes, and yeah, there's some
Dude,
extra time.
You don't have a shirt with some other dude's name on the back of it, do you? Though you don't have that going on, do you?
No. I'm not.
God.
I'm not
Thank
that
God.
Crazy.
All right.
Yeah.
I got nervous.
Yeah, no, don't get too nervous now.
Holy smokes.
But I will tell you is, here we are, like, okay, 5 minutes of extra time. And then next thing you know, it's like 2 minutes, 6 minutes, because maybe the referee is like, well, I want this other team to score. Sense of fair play, bro. The game's over.
You can't keep moving the goal line.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't keep moving the goalpost.
There you go.
Right.
You can't keep moving the goalpost. Spot on that, man. Okay, let's move on, man. Now, my favorite part. I'm sorry, you had something to say?
No, I'm good. I'm running along with you, brother.
Let's do it, man. So this is my favorite part of the segment, a trip down memory lane. What I do know, it's Broward. Is that correct?
Right, man. Broward County.
Broward County. Yeah, it's that Bostonian accent.
I know.
Broward County. You're a 30-year veteran. 1991?
Yeah, 91, man. 91.
Wow. You were aware of the Rodney King trial.
Oh, yeah, man. Good times. Not so much for our brothers at the LAPD, but,
I was going to ask you, did you guys watch like the verdict and what did you guys think?
Oh, yeah, no, everybody was dialed in on that, man. Because
that's historical.
Huh?
That's historical.
Yeah, it is. And I think it's historical for all the wrong reasons, man. I do we go a few minutes into it?
Of course. Yeah, let's talk about it.
I mean, listen, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And, it was indicative of where we're at today. It was the optics of the situation.
Yeah.
The optics were horrible, right?
Yes.
Horrible.
Yeah, it's ugly.
You couldn't argue that, right? But take the optics out of it.
Mm-hmm.
He's actively resisting.
Yeah.
And the state acquitted Stacy Kuhn and those officers.
Yeah.
Not guilty.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. What? So a jury of their peers found, after all the evidence, they were not guilty. Wait a minute. All right. So that's awesome. Oh, but don't celebrate yet, right? Because you correct me if I'm wrong, but then the feds come in because they've got this little thing. It's not double jeopardy because we didn't charge you federally.
Correct.
Which is bullshit, right? We're gonna have this charge called a civil rights violation, and so that's what we're gonna charge you with.
Yeah.
And then they take another bite at the apple, and again, that sense of fair play. If you're acquitted or found not guilty at the state level, it should be done.
Yeah.
It should be done. Hey, listen, they rioted anyways.
Yeah.
Right. They got their pound of flesh.
Yeah.
They got everybody, jammed up, and they went after them federally, and the city still burned to the ground.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
So, again, that was a foregone conclusion. They were going to riot. They were going to create problems, destroy businesses and communities, and attack people that had nothing to do with what happened that night.
Oh, absolutely. Just take advantage of it.
Make a martyr out of a criminal.
Yes.
And, and again, it's funny. We had asked before we went live, were we feeling any of that pushback in South Florida?
Yeah.
The folks in South Florida were smart enough to know not to push back. We had a good relationship with the community. Every now and then some smart ass would say something, and we would check them, hey, I'm sorry. What was that?
Right.
And we were fair. We were firm. And we didn't play that. We had a great relationship with the community. The
Good.
good people loved us, the bad people feared us. And you know if we go on this any further, man, we've lost that. Right now, nobody fears us. And we're
Yes.
we're we're really in a way right now.
True, true saying in terms of segue into today's policing. Absolutely.
Yeah,
All I got to say about the riots, I wasn't on the job, but I can tell you what I know now, having to reflect on it. Yeah,
sure.
to try to affect an arrest on a guy who's high on PCP, it doesn't look all that great. And
Oh,
history has made. But you know what?
yeah,
There was a lot of tension in the city of Los Angeles, and you're
sure.
absolutely right. They just took advantage of it and burned this place down for like a week. So,
Yeah, I
yeah,
just think about it. If they could have been convicted at the state level, they would have, right?
correct.
I mean,
Yeah,
why would they
yeah,
pass on that opportunity?
right.
They
And I think
couldn't convict him because they didn't
right, and not to get
violate
too
the
much
law.
into that actual event in it itself is that yeah, a lot of the application of force, there was a huge analysis as to how you apply force,
Right.
what were you taught in the academy, what type of training did you have, et cetera, et cetera. It's historical. I'm just glad South Florida, you know, didn't burn down, bro.
No, man.
That's all I care
No,
about.
they were smarter than that.
Well, that's good.
Yeah,
Okay,
right.
now internal affairs, man. That's what we call the podcast. So I know you
Yeah,
got a
bro.
story. You and I have talked about it, but let me set up the stage for you because
Sure.
I do know that you are an exceptional individual because you have accountability and you speak about the trials, transgressions, and tribulations that you had in your career.
Sure.
That is that takes a lot of strength. It takes a lot of courage, and you go around and I know that you speak about it. You get hired to let the next generation know what not to do in this case.
Right. Right.
And so what we really haven't touched about is the internal affairs component. And
Right.
you and I had this conversation, and we can agree that it's not the penalty that's the punishment for the most part. The punishment is how you're treated in the process.
The punishment's the process.
And let's do it, man. Tell me what happened,
Can I give two examples first?
please.
So early on in my career, I, I will say I was an alcoholic. I haven't had a drink in 27 years. So I decide not to identify as that guy anymore. But back in the day, I went to work drunk, and
Wow.
my squad mates put me to bed and handled all my calls till about 4 a.m. until the my sergeant asked to meet me at a local convenience store. I never made it to roll call, and so he sees me. He knows I'm three sheets to the wind, man. I'm still messed up pretty good. Could have Marlon thrown me in the back of his car. Could have taken me to the breath alcohol testing facility,
Hmm.
and he could have done sobriety tests on me, and I could have been 15. I could have been arrested right there and then. Go home. We're going to talk about this tomorrow. I come in the next day sober, and this is the component that I think is missing from a lot of our investigations. Now, listen, I know there's people cringing like, he did what? I think everybody gets one, man. Everybody gets one. And
Hmm.
so he said very plainly to me, last night will never be allowed to happen again. You've got two options. We can either command refer you,
Hmm.
or you can get help on your own. One or the other, but last night will never be allowed to happen again. Long story short, I went to, I decided to get help. I went to an AA meeting for cops, ran by cops. Um, and the long story short is I'm sober 27 years now. he knew that I was a good person, that I had made, that I was in a way, right?
Right.
That there was he used his rank and his power
Mm-hmm.
over me to help me find a solution that I needed, that I didn't even know I needed, right? So the role that he played, he could have he could have called out IA that night.
Absolutely.
He could have done gone with a career, been arrested. That was an option. But I think when we talk about internal affairs and internal discipline, I think it's important to remember where we once were in our careers. Um, you know, has anybody on this job ever driven under the influence of alcohol? Right. And if anybody tells me they haven't, I'm going to punch them in the mouth, right? Because it's a lie.
Yeah.
So knowing that and knowing that we can't be hypocritical, everybody gets an opportunity, man. Everybody gets a chance for redemption,
Mm-hmm.
a sense of fair play. And that's how that was handled. And so early on in my career, that was like in 95, 96. I was I was like, there's caring here, there's support,
Mm-hmm.
and there's people willing to help you solve problems. So I was feeling good about the process. Fast forward into my second or third kind of run-in.
Mm-hmm.
Always a bunch of run-ins here and there for use of force. I was a canine handler for a long time. As a matter of protocol, you ended up getting investigated pretty much every time you had an apprehension where there was injury. You
Mm-hmm.
know, a lot of eyes would look at the incident and all that, and never any issues with there. But for the listener, if they can remember, back in 2005, the hormone replacement therapy market kind of blew up,
Mm-hmm.
especially in South Florida. And essentially, you could order steroids through a website, through a distributor, and a doctor that you did not have a ongoing relationship with medically
Mm-hmm.
would you do a survey, and they would fill out the prescriptions. Um, it wasn't against the law. It wasn't even against policy because there was no law or policy
Right.
to address this issue,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
So the first suspension was because myself and about 20 other guys were found to have gone to this hormone replacement therapy company.
Okay.
And we just got suspended. And nobody could tell us really why, because nobody could point to a policy or a violation of the law.
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't too bad. I mean, not knowing, like the catch-all was failure to meet office standards.
Of course. Neglected
Okay,
duty.
well,
You failed to do something.
so what do you want me to stop going to this place? Well, we're not telling you that. Well, what are you telling me? Um, use your best judgment.
Hmm.
You okay? So part of me is like, I should run away from this place, but the other part of me is like, you know what? I'm going to keep doing what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
In hindsight, did I know that what I was doing was not appropriate? Yes, most certainly. Um, it wasn't illegal, but it wasn't appropriate. Just because you can doesn't necessarily mean you should.
Right.
And in the capacity as a law enforcement officer, that line, I was blurring, I was skirting that line, man,
Mm-hmm.
really, really close. And
Right.
so I continued to dance, so to speak, and
Mm-hmm.
dabble. And then there was a group of investigators that got real personal, and they started their own little investigation. into these pharmacies, and the
Hmm.
way they were going to get to the pharmacies was through the deputies that were clients.
Uh huh.
And the second go around, the second suspension, um, they decided to go after everyone, but before they did, they went through the list of people that were using this pharmacy, and they cherry picked who they were going to go after and who they were going to give a pass to.
So you were on
Um,
the hit list.
I was on the list again, and so if it's wrong for me, then it's wrong for you.
Correct.
And if it's wrong for me, it should also be wrong for the citizen down the street. If and it wasn't. And so that sense of fair play is starting to erode. And what the agency ended up doing, they did a fit for duty
Okay.
on those men and women that were using this facility. The only problem is they just pulled it out of thin air. Like when you do a fit for duty, there's a process.
I was going to ask you that.
No, there's a process in policy that says before you go ahead and subject a deputy for a fitness for duty evaluation, these are the steps you must take. You must notify the deputy of the deficiency and give them an opportunity to improve or change or address it. Um, there's a whole like a 12-step process to
Right.
get to where you would actually send me to a doctor. Now, now mind you, Marlon, I look like Frank Zane. You
Okay.
know Frank Zane? I look like
Nice.
Frank Zane.
Okay.
And they're sending me for a fit for duty. I will argue. So I go to a doctor. IA comes to my house in front of my wife and daughter, put me in the car, and take me to a medical facility where I am strip searched and a physical examination is done on my naked body under the threat of termination.
Wow.
And so you go, come on, man, really? This is what we're doing? And so, again, I'm not a choir boy, man, but I know this isn't the way it's supposed to go. I know this isn't procedurally the correct way to go. And so I get, I'm told to sign my medical records a release to the Broward County Sheriff's Office or face termination.
Wow.
You can't do that. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me, Marlon, because although I was physically more than fit for duty, mentally I was not.
Hmm.
They they missed they missed the opportunity to intervene on a psychological level
Right.
because I was spiraling horribly in my personal life. Um, they never asked why.
The
They never
why is
asked
so
why.
important.
Why is really important, man, because why leads to the truth. Why leads to the truth. And so um, that signing of my medical file went to my primary care physician, a gentleman I had not seen for years. And he called me. He was like, hey, you want me to do what? Release all your medical records to your employer? And he starts talking about HIPAA and they can't do that. And this is
Right.
a violation. I go, look, man, just do it. Right now, if I don't do it, they're going to fire me. And so he does. But what that starts, Marlon, is an interaction with me and my primary care physician
Hmm.
that I needed somebody in my corner as a somebody supporting me, somebody that
Yeah.
could see clearly me and the issues that I was struggling with and help me get through this really tough time. They're talking about sending me to prison for obtaining a controlled substance by fraud. And so am I an angel? No. But like we said, it's not the charge, it's the process that I think we need to take issue with, because that ultimately is the lasting damage, if you will, that occurs, is when we're not treated with a sense of fair play. That leaves a bad taste in everybody's mouth.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that the department never ordered you not to go back to that place.
Right.
And you were kind of like, okay, should I go or should I not? Or should I continue to do this, in which you did?
Yeah.
If the department would have told you and gave you that order, you think things would have been different?
I know it would have been different, because after the second suspension,
Yes.
Marlon, they came up with a policy.
So you made Broward County
to.
policy. It's called the John Kelly policy.
Yeah, man. They came up with a policy. You need to have a face-to-face personal relationship with your primary care physician if he's going to subscribe to you these different steroids. You need to have, you cannot have an online, you can't buy this online anymore.
Right. Okay.
That was the policy. You need to have a relationship, a face-to-face with your primary care physician. They changed policy. The policy never even existed. So they made a policy. Once they made the policy, everybody, I complied with policy.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Which is why I got my job back, because I didn't do anything against policy or the law. They didn't like the optics of it.
You got your job back. Then what happened?
I got my job, and see, the problem was I was a training sergeant at the time.
Okay.
Everybody in the agency knew me, and everybody in the agency now, I wasn't allowed to interact with anybody. They pulled me from that assignment.
Okay.
And, where's John? Oh, John's in timeout again, because of steroids. And so, there were, at the time, people like to say they don't care what other people think.
Mm-hmm.
But that's bullshit. I think ultimately we do care what other people think of us, especially within our own agencies and departments. We spend a career and a lifetime establishing a reputation as somebody that is dependable, that will have your back always, that will go to the mat for you. And and then when you become the subject of an investigation like that, I think it takes a piece from you that you can't ever get back. And so I went back to training, and I had a great squad of guys around me, that and that we were, and we were doing some really great work, keeping guys alive and going home. And so, after all those investigations were over, I went back to training, and I continued my work there for a few more years before I went on to be the motor sergeant there.
Okay. It wasn't the same, was it, when you came back?
No, man. Listen.
How big is Broward County Sheriff's Department?
Right now we're a monster, man. We have all the corrections, CPIS, the port, the airport, all different departments, the fire rescue. We're 6,000. We're about 6,000 employees.
What about at the time that you were there?
We were still that big. But road patrol and the DLE side of the house, maybe 1,500, 2,000.
Okay, and the reason I'm asking is because everybody knows John Kelly.
Right.
And next thing you know, you get involved in this, and now everybody knows what John Kelly is known as, that steroid guy, or whatever the case may be.
Right. Yeah. But listen, quite frankly, there are worse things that people could be known
Yeah.
for,
Yeah.
right? So
Good point.
the guy who's hopped up on juice. I mean, you're probably not going to step to me and run your mouth because you might just get your eye dotted. But it was not ideal, man. It wasn't
Yeah.
ideal. It was just what it did for me, quite honestly, Marlon, was it eroded
Mhm.
a little bit of that faith that I had that things were on the up and up, that
Yes.
that there was a process, and that you know um that sense of fair play. I was investigated for over a year.
Wow.
There's no 90, not somebody says, oh, 90, stop with your 90 days. You know, the case needs to be, cleared and processed within 3 months. Listen, stop with your
Yeah.
nonsense. And so there were a lot of things, like my takeaways were, I knew everybody that was investigating me.
Mhm.
And I just shook my head, man, because they weren't pulling the strings. They were being put in a position to do what they had to do if they wanted to keep their jobs.
Right.
It was that trickle down, man. It was all bad mojo, man. And that's why I said the importance of having an internal affairs division that can work autonomously on the case and not be pushed and pulled at the direction of an employee benefits director, or somebody
Right.
in upper command who um, has an axe to grind or something like that.
Absolutely. After hearing your story, all I can think about is, has someone pretty much has a personal vendetta against you and maybe your boys, your partners,
Right.
and they were
And,
going
and
to do
listen, Marlon,
anything
look,
possible to get you
I
out.
gotta say this, bro. Listen, I am not crying here. I'm not an angel.
Right.
I, you know, I knew what the deal was, um, but it would have been nice to have been asked why, and and
Yeah.
and in all those investigations, I was never interviewed.
Wow. That's
I was
another.
never allowed to give a statement or explain, or
Mm,
it's just. And so, again, what are we doing here? You know,
yeah. Eh,
how are we making these decisions if you haven't even spoke to me?
yeah. And those are the lessons learned, I
Right, right,
think,
right.
in terms of like the process.
Yeah, yeah,
If you
absolutely.
feel that there's this group of sworn employees with a ringleader, if you will, let's at the very least ask them all these really tough questions and go from there. And then after that, then we can start framing allegations and make it
Right.
fair. Like you said, essentially fair play.
Yeah.
Spot
You,
on that.
you have me violating policies that don't exist.
Right. So those are the conversations you got to have.
Yeah.
What
Right,
policies are we
right.
looking at? Maybe it's going to be like unbecoming conduct. Look, the fact that they're doing this buying from pharmacies, there's no
Right.
policy. It's not a really positive reflection on the department, on the community, and on all of our officers and themselves. So you know what? Let's at least think about an allegation of like unbecoming conduct of an officer, something along those lines.
Right.
But again, those are the conversations that didn't happen, and I take it from what I'm listening to you is they made policy and we learned and we've
Right. Well,
grown.
and the minute they made policy, if I violate it, that's my fault.
That's right. Sustain accountability
It's on
on
me.
your part.
It's on me. But
Yeah.
oh, you make a policy, I adhere to it.
Yeah.
Easy peasy.
You know what, John? I got to ask you this because in listening to this whole story, it's almost as if, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm glad that I went through all this because of what you're doing now.
Oh yeah. Listen, it's one part of it, right? It's one
Right.
part of it. It's I have in this second chapter, Marlon, there isn't an experience that I haven't gone through. alcoholism, infidelity, addiction, that I haven't taken something positive away from,
Okay.
to help our brothers and sisters that are still struggling, that are still in it, that are still waking up every day and doing,
Yes.
God's work, man. Very noble profession. And so, no, absolutely. All my life experiences, um, I have a choice, right? We all have a choice. Either
Yes.
we take them and we go, all right, good, good. I am going to take away the positive, and everything else I'm going to leave in my rear view, and I'm going to use it to enhance and empower people. And so that's kind of like what I think I've done with this situation and others.
And that's very, very good, because you'd be surprised. There's people who go through what you went through, and they do their time, and guess what? They ride off on the sunset, and they don't care about the
Yeah,
next generation. There's
yeah.
situations.
I think if we're going to be in this, and it's what you're doing now, man. I think there's a moral obligation, Marlon, for us to
Yes,
care about our
absolutely.
brothers and sisters, man. That's what you're doing, and that's what I'm trying to do.
100%, brother. You couldn't have said any better. I know there's someone listening, there's someone watching, or is going to watch the Internal Affairs Police podcast, and get something out of this, because, as you know, there's what, 18,000 police agencies in the United States, something along the lines of 800,000 plus sworn officers doing God's work, and someone is experiencing probably the same circumstances that
Yeah, no
you
doubt.
and I, I've gone through. So I appreciate you
Sure.
sharing all that.
No, my
We'll
pleasure.
we'll touch that on the end of what you do, but now let's get into worst and best. The worst incident radio call that you experienced in your 30-year career.
All right. There's a bunch of them. They all around revolve around people dying, and one that was just god awful. There was a guy that was getting chased out of Dade County. He 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 killed two people in Dade County. Was running up 27, and he T-boned a woman who had just dropped off her kid at school, and she got ejected. And we showed up, and he was shooting at people, and we ran down. We grabbed her, threw her in my unit, and brought her to an EMS truck, and she passed. But the worst was meeting her family
Oh,
that afternoon at the house. That was a really tough day, man.
oh, that's
Um,
devastating, man.
yeah, and it's just sad. The best days,
Yes.
there's no one, but when I was the motor sergeant running my guys, running POTUS, VPOTUS, and getting to work with Palm Beach Motors and Metro Day Motors, and man, we was just a shit. We ran the show, and we got to do some really cool things, and there was a sense of camaraderie, man. When you've got 150 motor guys,
Uh huh.
all leapfrogging and jumping and doing their
Mm,
thing, and being a part of protecting the most powerful people in the world. That was a cool jam, man. I enjoyed that time with my brothers.
that's awesome. You know, for your thumbnail in this episode, you got to send me a picture with those high boots that I never
Oh,
liked.
jeez,
Yeah,
man.
I'm
Yeah.
sure
Well,
you
I
got a
got
picture there somewhere.
I got pictures with Trump and Biden and Pence and
Oh man,
the whole crew, man. Yeah, man.
looking like Punch, man. I love it. I love it. Well, look,
Oh,
we're at
goodness.
the end and parting ways.
Yeah, man.
You, I'll leave the floor up to you. I know you're doing some really good work. Let's talk about that. And for anyone
Thanks,
who's
Marlon.
listening, some young officer, young sergeant, seasoned
Yeah,
sergeant,
man.
seasoned
Yeah,
officer,
right.
yeah, whoever's, because a lot of sworn, our brothers and sisters in blue are listening and watching this. What kind of advice
Sure.
you give them, man?
So, this second chapter, man, I have failed more times than I care to remember, man. Alcoholic, addict, adulterer, and I'll stop at the A's, right? Because I know you want to wrap this up soon, so we won't go into the B's, C's, and D's, man. But I developed a program called Sometimes Heroes Need Help. Sometimes Heroes Need Help. And it focuses on accountability, man. You, you taking care of you in your personal, professional, financial, physical, and mental health. And how you do that, how you love yourself, how you forgive yourself, how you show up every day to be the best version of you, regardless of your past, right? Regardless of your past. And so, if people are interested, and then again, I appreciate you giving me this
Of
opportunity. They can
course.
go to my website, lawenforcementlifecoach.com, lawenforcementlifecoach.com. It's got links to my podcast as well, and an easy way to get in touch with me. And I really just, I appreciate this opportunity. I love sitting down with you, man. I'm hopeful that we'll get together in 2024 in person. That would be awesome.
Yes, I'm going out to Broward. That's
Yeah, man.
that's my
Oh my
goal,
God.
brother.
Too funny. Too funny.
Listen, I've really enjoyed all this. Finally, we got to connect,
Yeah, man.
and I'll be out there in Florida soon, brother. Thanks for all the time.
Looking forward
I really
to
appreciate
you
it.
got a place to stay. No worries.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. And please, on a parting note from me, be safe out there, and don't forget to go Code 6.